Hello there. We're back with another video. And today I want to talk about virtual machines. What are they? Well, a virtual machine is basically an operating system that you run through software versus running it on a physical machine. And so today I want to demonstrate exactly how you can install an operating system through virtual machine software like Oracle's VirtualBox, for example, just like how you would on a physical machine. So let's get started. So the first step in creating your virtual machine is to name it and tell the software exactly which operating system that you're installing. So just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to be installing Windows NT 4.0. And so next, after you name your virtual machine, you'll tell it which folder that you want to store the virtual machine in, which this folder is completely fine for the purposes of this video. And then you'll tell the software which type of operating system that we're installing, which is Microsoft Windows, and then what exact version that we're installing, which is Windows NT 4.0. So click Next. So now we create our memory size. So one thing to keep in mind is virtual machine software is heavily reliant on how much physical RAM that you have inside your system. So the more RAM that you have, the more RAM that you can allocate to your virtual machines. So just as an example, this machine that I'm running right now has 6 gigabytes of memory, which is a decent size. And the recommended memory size for Windows NT is 128 megabytes. So depending on how much RAM that we have is how much RAM that we can give to Windows NT 4.0. So another thing to keep in mind is once you set the value of RAM that you want to use for the system, when that virtual machine is running, that RAM is inaccessible to your main system. That RAM is specifically saved for the virtual machine. So just to keep that in mind. So 128 megabytes is perfectly fine for the purposes of this video. So we click Next. Next, we create our virtual hard disk. So if you wish, you can add a virtual hard disk now, and it gives you an option to either create a new one or select from the list of another location using the folder icon. So since I don't have an existing virtual hard disk file, we're going to choose Create a Virtual Hard Disk Now. And this is the option that you'll be using for most of your virtual machines. And the recommended size of this hard disk in this case is 2 gigabytes. We'll be able to change that size later on, luckily. So click Create, and it'll create our virtual hard disk. And now we choose our hard disk file type. So if you don't need to use your virtual machine with other virtualization software, then leave it at default settings, which in this case it is VirtualBox disk image. But if we're going to be using it with other software like, say, VMware, for example, then we would choose either VHD or VMDK just to make sure that it's compatible with those software. So we click Next. And now we come to storage on physical hard disk. So we have two options, dynamically allocated and fixed size. So a dynamically allocated hard disk file will only use space on your physical hard disk as it fills up, which is up to a maximum fixed size. Although it will not shrink again automatically when space on it is freed up. And then a fixed size hard disk file may take longer to create on some systems, but is often faster to use. Mainly because if you choose fixed size, so in our instance, if we choose 2 gigabytes for our fixed size, it will be 2 gigabytes no matter what. And it'll fill up to that point, if that makes any sense. So for our case, we're going to be choosing fixed size. So click Next. And now we move on to file location and size. So this is where we can adjust the size of our virtual hard disk partition. Again, this is also reliant on how much physical hard drive space that you have inside your system. And just for demonstration purposes, we're going to leave this at the default size, which is 2 gigabytes for Windows NT 4.0. So click Create. And this may take a little bit of time to create depending on how big your virtual hard disk is. So just keep that in mind. So now our virtual machine is officially created, but we're not done quite yet. We still have to do a little more configuration before we can install our operating system. So we go to settings. If this load, there we go. So let's see here. What do I want to, what do I want to change in here? I'm probably not going to talk a whole lot about a bunch of these advanced features, but I'm going to be showing you some general ones that you'll want to configure first before installing your operating system. So the first one that we want to do is display, which is where we shall give the virtual machine the amount of video memory that we want, which we'll leave it at 16 megabytes just for demonstration purposes. We can also change the amount of monitors that we use, which I'm only running single monitor setup right now, so we can't actually configure that. And then we also have our graphics controller settings, which most of the time you can just leave this at default. And then if you want, you can check this box that says enable 3D acceleration, which when checked, the virtual machine will be given access to the 3D graphics capabilities available from the host computer. I don't think this works with older operating systems like Windows NT 4 because it does require a specific amount of virtual video memory, which I think it's 256 megabytes, at least from my case, but that could be different in yours. So then we go to storage. This is where we'll configure the ISO file that we'll use to install the virtual machine. So we'll navigate to the optical drive. So you can do one of two ways. You can either use a physical disk like a CD or DVD to install the operating system on the virtual machine, or you can just use an ISO file, which is basically a disk image. And we're doing just that in this case. So we'll navigate to the icon that shows a disk and click on choose a disk file. And we'll navigate to where we have our disk file, which is this one right here. Double click on that. And there we go. Our disk file is now selected. And now we configure our network settings. So an easy way to do this, we choose the bridged adapter setting. That will basically give the virtual machine access to the physical machine's network capabilities. So that's the easiest way to do it. I'm not going to go into discussion about the advanced settings. This is basically just where you select your host machine's network adapter that you want to use for the virtual machine, your MAC address, etc. And now finally we'll want to configure our USB settings. So to do that, we'll check enable USB controller, which will give the virtual machine access to our physical USB devices. And this is where we can add our various USB devices like flash drives, external hard drives, etc. So I'm not going to be showing this off just because this is for demonstration purposes only. But if you really wanted to, say for example, if we wanted to add a flash drive to use with Windows NT, we would click this button that says add new USB filter. And we would click on the plus sign with the USB. And then this is where it would display our various devices that we want to add, which there's none detected just because I don't have any connected right now. So after all that configuration is said and done, the last thing we have to do is power on our virtual machine and install the operating system. So we click start. And it'll ask us which startup disk that we want to use, either in the physical optical drive or our ISO file, which we're going to be choosing the latter. So click start. Full screen this just so it's easier to read. And once all that's configured, the system will automatically start installing the operating system exactly how you would on a physical machine. Easy as that. So that wraps up the quick demonstration of how to install a virtual machine. Let me know if you have any questions, and hopefully this video helped you out. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.